It was a Tuesday when the call came, one of those early evening rings that always carried a certain weight. I glanced at the screen. Mom. I almost didn't pick up, but I knew she'd just keep calling until I did. Callan, sweetheart. How are you? Marlise's voice was soaked in saccharine, all syrup and sparkle, like she'd just remembered she had a son. I leaned back in my chair. I'm good. You? Oh, you know. Same old, same old. How's work? Still doing that tech thing? Still? Always still. Like nothing I did had ever evolved past a phase. It's going well, I replied flatly. What's going on? There was a pause, a beat too long. Well, it's about Ilara. Of course it is. She's gotten into a little trouble. I let the silence stretch, not offering any comfort. She made a few unfortunate choices, and now, well, she owes some people money. $40,000. I didn't say anything. I just watched the cursor blink on the document I had been editing. I knew better than to interrupt her buildup. They're not the kind of people you ignore, Callan. She's scared. We're all scared. Who did she borrow it from? I asked. She didn't say. But it's bad. Very bad. Her voice trembled, carefully calibrated for maximum sympathy. She could get hurt. So you're calling to... She took a breath. We need your help. Just this once. You've done so well for yourself. You have the means. And if you don't, her voice sharpened, if you don't step up, don't expect us to be there for you anymore. We will cut you off, Callan. That made me laugh, not out loud, but somewhere deep in my chest, bitter and sharp. Be there for me. Since when were they ever still? I kept my voice even. 40,000 is a lot. I know, honey, but she's your sister. I looked out the window. The sun was setting behind the Seattle skyline, smearing gold across glass towers. Let me think about it. Really, oh, Callan. Thank you. The relief in her voice was too immediate, too eager. I knew you'd come through. I hung up a minute later with all the appropriate pleasantries, said I'd be in touch. But my hand was cold when I set the phone down. The silence that followed felt heavier than the call itself. This wasn't the first time. It was just the most expensive. Growing up, Ilara was chaos in ballet flats. Wrecked cars, failed jobs, emotional breakdowns over boys she'd known for a week. Every time she spiraled, it was me who got the call. Me who was expected to clean it up. Marlise would say, "You're the stable one." She's fragile. Byron would nod in agreement and sip his Scotch content to stay silent unless something needed fixing with a hammer. At 18, I was paying rent while Ilara got new purses for good behavior. When I left for college, no one helped me move. When I graduated, no one showed up. But I showed up every time they asked. Until now. Because now, they weren't asking. They were threatening, and they had no idea just how ready I was to play along. I was 18 when Marlise first handed me a rent invoice typed, printed, and signed like we were strangers running a lease agreement. I'd just started community college in St. Paul and was working evenings at a hardware store hauling lumber for contractors who barely looked me in the eye. The invoice had no warning, no conversation. Just, "This house isn't free." Callan written in blue ink at the bottom. Ilara, meanwhile, was 17 and getting a new MacBook because she'd cried when her old one felt slow. She didn't pay rent. She didn't pay for gas or her phone bill. She didn't even do chores. That was too stressful for her creative spirit. But when she dropped out of her first college after one semester, too many all-nighters, she said it was me who got the "you need to be more supportive" talk. Marlise brought it up over meatloaf like it was a family decision I'd been consulted on. Byron sat there as always, nodding like a metronome. "Just let her figure it out," they'd said. "She's delicate." "You're not." That line stayed with me. Not as a compliment, but a sentence. By the time I graduated, I'd put myself through school with scholarship, student loans, and part-time work. They didn't attend the ceremony, said it was too far. Ilara didn't even text. I moved to Seattle a month later. Distance was my only peace. I told myself it was a new start, but I never really disconnected. Not when the calls still came. Ilara wrecked her car. Could I lend her $2,000 for repairs? Ilara got dumped. Could I fly home for emotional support? Ilara needed rent money just this once. And every time I said no, I became the villain. Cold. Ungrateful. Distant. I started measuring our relationship in terms of what they asked for, not what they gave. I once cut contact for 6 months. No calls, no texts, nothing. During that time, Marlise never reached out, not even to ask if I was alive. But the moment Alara lost her third job in a year, my phone rang. "She needs you," was all she said. No hello. This pattern wasn't new, but this time it wasn't just emotional labor. This time it was money. Real money. $40,000, almost what I made in a year after taxes when I first moved west. I stared at the email Marlise sent, the bank details neatly included. The subject line just said, "For Alara." No greeting, no thank you, just expectation dressed up in familial duty. I closed the laptop without replying. Then I opened a drawer I hadn't looked in for years. Inside was the original letter from my grandfather's estate mentioning a joint trust account in both our names. I'd forgotten about it, but suddenly I remembered every detail, and a new thought began to form, quiet and sharp. I waited 2 days before calling Marlise back, just long enough for her desperation to ferment, but not long enough for her to find a new plan. She answered on the second ring, breathless, like she'd been staring at the phone. "Callan," she said, voice trembling with forced softness. "You're right," I said calmly. "Family helps family." There was a pause, and then she burst into tears. Real or not, I couldn't tell anymore. "Oh, honey, thank you. I knew you'd do the right thing." "I told your father I'll need the details," I interrupted. "Debt source, amount, where the funds should go." "Oh, of course," she sniffed. "I'll have Alara send everything over right away. You're doing the right thing, sweetheart, I promise." I gave her the faintest chuckle. "That's what I'm counting on." We hung up, and 5 minutes later, Alara emailed me a scanned sheet of numbers with sloppy screenshots from some shady peer-to-peer loan site. No signatures, no official statements, just a total $40, $193, $12 owed by next week. At the bottom she wrote, "Please hurry. You have no idea how bad this is." I stared at her message and felt nothing. Then I opened another email, one I just sent to Meryl Singh, my old law school roommate turned corporate lawyer. We hadn't talked much lately, but she always answered when I included the word urgent in the subject line. The trust account had always been a hazy memory from my late teens. My grandfather, a quiet man with an old-school sense of fairness, had created a small education trust in both our names. Equal shares, untouched unless for tuition or critical life development. I used it for 1 semester before I won a full ride and left the rest untouched. Alara, on the other hand, bled it dry in under 2 years. Private university tuition off campus housing a study abroad trip she didn't finish. Then it was gone. But when I asked Meryl to pull the file, she sent something I didn't expect, a statement showing a $42,000 withdrawal years after Alara's share had been depleted, and it hadn't been authorized by me. The last disbursement was labeled Emergency Assistance, Meryl wrote. Requested by your mother. The institution approved it under the assumption of joint access, but legally it came out of your half. I reread the email twice. "So let me get this straight," I replied. "They used my portion to bail her out before." "Yes," Meryl confirmed. "Technically, they've already taken from you. If you choose to move what's left into a personal holding, you'd be well within your rights." I sat back and exhaled slowly. They wanted me to pay for Alara again, but they already had. Quietly, without telling me, and now they were asking for more. So I smiled, not a real smile, not the kind that reached your eyes, but the kind you wear when you finally understand exactly how the game works and how to win it. I opened a new tab and logged into the trust account. There was just enough left, just enough to make it sting. The wire transfer took less than 20 minutes. I filled out the form, selected the amount $40,193, $12, and listed the recipient details Alara had sent me. The money came straight from the trust account, the one they'd already dipped into years ago. There was no flourish, no dramatic moment. Just a quiet click, a confirmation screen, and a digital receipt. I forwarded the confirmation to Marlise with a 1-line message: "Payment completed. Let me know if anything else is needed." Less than 2 minutes later, my phone rang. "Oh, Callan, thank you," she gushed. "You don't know what this means. You saved your sister. You saved all of us." I said nothing, just listened. "You've always been the strong one," she went on. "I knew I could count on you. I told your father, our boy never lets us down." Her voice cracked like she was choking on relief. "This changes everything." I let her say it all. Then I ended the call, politely hung up, and stared at the wall for a while. An hour later, Ilara texted, "Ilara, I knew you'd come through. Thank you. Seriously, I'll pay you back someday. I mean it." I didn't reply. I wasn't waiting for her to mean anything. By the third day, the silence began to feel like closure. I imagined them all sleeping better, relieved the crisis was over, thinking the storm had passed. Marlise probably felt victorious, the orchestrator of yet another guilt-wrapped miracle. Then the phone rang again. Only this time it was Marlise who sounded breathless for a different reason. "What did you do?" she snapped, voice cold and tight. "I just got a call from the bank." I waited. "They said the trust account, Callan, they said it was yours. That you moved the remaining balance. That the last withdrawal was legally classified as your portion." "That's right," I said calmly. "It was mine. Always was. But I authorized the previous." "You didn't," I interrupted. "You assumed. They allowed it under joint oversight, not legal ownership. What you spent, that was already mine. I just made it official." "You tricked us." "No," I said. "I paid exactly what you asked for, and I used what was already mine." The silence on the other end was long and bitter. I could almost hear the realization settling in the loss of control, the unraveling of the leverage she thought she had. They hadn't asked me to be generous. They'd demanded it, and they'd done so, thinking I had no choice but to obey. But I did, and I had. 3 days later, I got an envelope in the mail. Inside was a handwritten note from my father. Just one line. "You'll regret this one day." I placed it in the same drawer as the trust documents and closed it without a second thought. Because regret wasn't the feeling taking hold. It was something else entirely. The first email came the next morning. The subject line was in all caps, "You stole from us." I didn't open it. By lunch, I had 3 missed calls from Marlise, 4 texts from Ilara, and a voicemail from Byron, which was surprising he almost never called. I played it on speaker while sipping my coffee. "You may think you're clever," my father said, his voice steadier than I expected. "But what you did was wrong. Morally. Legally. You've shamed this family, Callan. I'm ashamed of you." There it was. The sentence I'd been unconsciously waiting for since I was old enough to understand what shame felt like. Coming from the man who never once said he was proud. I finished my coffee and archived the message. The next few days followed the same pattern, Marlise flooding my inbox with dramatic accusations. "You manipulated the system. You violated our trust. You're as selfish as you are cold." Ilara's messages were less articulate and more venomous. "Ilara, you knew what you were doing. You set me up." "Ilara, I hope you're happy. You've ruined everything." "Ilara, we were counting on you." That last line made me laugh. I started forwarding everything to Meryl, tagging each message by sender and timestamp. She replied with a single thumbs-up emoji and "Keep it coming. This is gold." Then I crafted a response. One message sent to all 3. Subject, Ray the payment. "You asked me to pay." I did. I never said it would be with my own money. "We're done here." No response for 12 hours. Then came the escalation. Marlise showed up at my workplace. It was Friday afternoon. I had just finished a project call when I saw her standing in the lobby through the glass wall of the conference room. Red coat, arms crossed, lips pursed so tight they practically disappeared. I walked out slowly, keeping a polite distance. My co-workers watched from their desks, trying not to stare. The receptionist looked panicked. Callan. Marlise hissed, "I need to speak with you. I'm at work." She stepped forward, lowering her voice only slightly. "You embarrassed this family. You humiliated me. That money wasn't yours to spend like that." "I used the funds from the account you already took from," I said evenly. "I just used what was left." "You weaponized it," she snapped. "You manipulated the system. You made fools of us." "I just followed your rules," I replied. "You said family helps family." I helped efficiently. "I should have known you'd twist this. You should have known I'd stop cleaning up your mess." Security arrived before things got louder. They asked politely if everything was okay. I nodded. Marlise stared at me like she didn't recognize the man in front of her. Maybe she didn't. She left without another word. Back at my desk, I found a new email from Ilara. It simply read, "I hope you sleep well, traitor." I closed my laptop, stood up, and walked out of the office without saying a word. That night, I took a long walk around Green Lake. The city buzzed around me, but my mind was quiet. They'd always seen me as the safety net. But I was finally learning how to cut the cords. By Monday morning, I had Meryl on retainer. I forwarded her everything: voicemails, texts, emails, even the footage from the office security camera that showed Marlies being escorted out. Meryl didn't blink. She was surgical calm, almost bored. "We'll draft cease and desist notices for all 3, she said, cracking her knuckles. They cross the line again, we escalate. By Wednesday, they were sent certified, signed, delivered, and then silence. No more texts, no more veiled threats, no voicemail lectures, no new email accusations, nothing. The quiet was so unfamiliar I didn't trust it at first. I kept checking my phone like I was missing something, but it was real. They'd gone dark. I spent the first few days replaying everything, wondering if I'd been cruel, if maybe I could have handled it softer, with more patience, more grace. But every time I traced the steps backward, I ended up in the same place they had expected me to pay the price for someone else's recklessness. Again. And I was done doing that. I took some of the mental space they used to occupy and started putting it elsewhere. I joined a hiking group. I reconnected with an old college roommate who now lived nearby. I went to a trivia night at a bar near Capitol Hill and didn't excuse myself early. Then, on a quiet Sunday morning, I texted Aunt Geneva. She'd always been different. Quieter, thoughtful. When I was 12, she was the only adult who ever asked how I was doing when Alara was in meltdown mode. She picked up on the second ring. I heard she said, without needing context, "I'm sorry." I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that. We talked for nearly an hour. No judgment, no sides, just a conversation between 2 people who understood what it meant to be shut out and fed up. Before we hung up, she said, "You didn't do anything wrong. Don't let them convince you otherwise." Later that day, I opened the photo album on my phone. There weren't many pictures of my family to begin with. A blurry Thanksgiving dinner here, a birthday cake there. A few old group shots where I was always standing off to the side. But I deleted them anyway, one by one. It wasn't an act of anger. It was relief. I kept only one photo: me at age 20, standing beside my grandfather in front of the rusted garage he never bothered to repaint. He had his arm slung over my shoulder, both of us laughing at something I don't remember. That one stayed. Everything else was gone. I turned off my phone and stepped outside as the sun broke through the gray. The air was cold, but it felt clean. Tomorrow, I'd meet the new hiking group for a trail just outside Snoqualmie, the weekend after trivia again. And for once, I wasn't doing it to prove anything. I was just living. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. 6 months later, my life is quieter than it's ever been. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment near Green Lake, now close enough to walk the trail in the mornings, far enough that no one from the past could show up at my door without a serious trip. I traded the old downtown grind for a remote position, and not long after got a promotion I didn't even ask for. Apparently, showing up, delivering without drama, and not needing constant hand-holding makes an impression. I'm seeing someone too. Her name's Ro. She doesn't ask me why I don't talk about my family, and she doesn't fill silences with assumptions. She just listens when I want to share and changes the subject when I don't. It's the kind of relationship I didn't think I was allowed to have, one with space and choice. Ilara lost her car, then her apartment. Last I heard, she moved in with a cousin in Duluth who has 2 kids and no patience. Marlies still makes her calls to extended family, twisting the story, painting me as cold and ungrateful. But fewer people buy it now. Maybe they're finally seeing the pattern. Maybe they've stopped pretending not to. I keep a journal these days, nothing elaborate, just late-night scribbles to remind myself that this happened, that I walked through it and came out the other side. A few nights ago, I wrote they wanted me to pay. I did. And now, for the first time, I'm truly free. I don't share that page with anyone, but I think about all the people who might need to read it, the ones who've been told they're only valuable if they're useful, the ones who've been holding broken family bridges together with silence. To them, I'd say, stop paying. Stop paying with your time, your peace, your identity. Stop trading your well-being for crumbs of conditional love. You don't owe anyone your ruin. Let the bridge burn. And walk away while it collapses behind you. You're not responsible for the fire, only for surviving it.